In Game 1 of Western Semifinal series between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves, Chris Finch, Minnesota's head coach, defensively placed Rudy on Aaron Gordon and Cat on Nikola Jokic. The logic behind this idea was for Rudy to be both around the painted area and to also sag off of Gordon and to roam around defensively by helping in containing Jokic. On top of that, in PNR actions, both Cat and Naz Reid was ignoring the ball handler as they quickly recovered on Nikola when he was rolling or popping on a 3-point line out of his screen. And the reason for this is that Rudy is in that strong side of the court, acting as a second wall, so Karl Anthony Towns doesn't need to fully switch, doesn't need to drop, he simply goes back on Jokic. As for the driving player, he still needs to challenge another big body under the basket, and that is of course the Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. Jamal Murray, similarly to Devin Booker, was visibly annoyed by the sheer length that the Timberwolves has at their disposal. Driving is not easy as there's always Rudy creeping around. Attempting any kind of contested jump shots or step back jump shots is challenging because of Jaden McDaniels and Alexander Walker. It's tough to beat that kind of length. If we go 4 years back for a bit, when Utah played against the Nuggets, Rudy directly was responsible for Jokic. The aftermath was that it created space and gaps simply because Rudy was glued on Nikola and Utah's perimeter defenders like Clarkson, Mitchell and Ingles were simply below average defensively. Thus, Jamal Murray and Nuggets role players used those gaps to their advantage and Nikola fed them the ball. So yeah, that's an entirely different scenario that Rudy Gobert saw himself playing for the Utah Jazz compared to what we're seeing now. Although, if we take the second game of the semifinal series, Rudy Gobert was not present. He didn't play, but Minnesota still managed to crush the Denver Nuggets. So how the hell did Minnesota defend without Rudy, you may ask? Halfway to the first period, Minnesota began sending double teams on Nikola Jokic. Now, double teaming Nikola is risky as hell because 9 times out of 10, Jokic will make the correct choice to kick out the ball to an open teammate. But with this decision to double team Nikola, Wolves were challenging other Nuggets players to make a correct play, but they didn't. And this is what I'm exactly talking about. So by this moment, Nikola was double teamed dozens of times, so Christian Braun has an open lane to cut. He had plenty of time to anticipate what's going to happen, that Nikola is going to be double teamed, so he has to be monitoring the situation closely. And he should have been already in motion to move towards the basket. But what happens instead? The split second of Christian not reading the play causes Naz to recover on Braun. So Christian is already late to cut, also there's Holiday running. So then Braun brings Naz Reid with him. So that split second of Christian Braun sleeping and not realizing what's happening while it's happening, not only did it blunder the opportunity for some points, but it caused a turnover. Also would like to point out how well Minnesota's squad reacts to off-ball cuts. This defensive game plan requires great timing. They know Jokic will dish great passes to its cutting teammates, so they need to rotate over and help each other defensively for this plan to work. I would like to continue nitpicking these, I wouldn't even want to call it, I don't know, mistakes by Denver's role players. In some cases, yeah, sure, like previous concentrational laps by Christian Braun was a big mistake, but in most scenarios, it's just Minnesota's smothering defense that causes these doubts for the Nuggets players. So right here you have Aaron Gordon rolling to the basket, no one is tagging him, so the main focus for Minnesota in defending this Iverson's play is to prevent Jamal Murray from getting anything, a drive, an open 3-point look, so Cat is hedging and then recovering on Gordon, and even though there's no Rudy in this game, the game plan is the same. Someone is rotating from the weak side to the strong side to help over, in this case is Jaden McDaniels, and yet again Minnesota is giving Denver's role players open looks and the freedom in decision making. A great example why weak side is equally as important as the strong side offensively. So you have a PNR play by Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. The strong side in basketball is where the ball is located and where the driving player, or more like in which direction is the ball heading. So this is your strong side. Meanwhile, in the weak side, Denver Nuggets has my already mentioned Christian Braun and Peyton Watson. Both of them are low volume shooters. So because weak side is getting ignored, Cat slides over to the strong side. There's no room for Jamal to penetrate or to set up the rolling Jokic, and right here Conley will make a good read to move towards Christian. And I mean, you could sense that Watson could have kicked out the ball earlier. Also, when Christian was cutting, there was a moment where he could have passed the ball, but this is the game plan for Minnesota. Force Denver's role players to make decisions in the split of a second. Reggie's and Nicholas pick and roll. Out of a screen you can see Minnesota forgetting Aaron Gordon, who's in the boxed area, and Reggie can't make a bounce pass because of 3 white jerseys, but there's definitely an opportunity for a lob to Aaron. That doesn't happen and the possession goes nowhere. In this play, Nikola Jokic backs down Cat, and Denver does a good job in setting up Nikola, as in the wing area there's Caldwell Pope, who's a shooter and can provide Nikola with some much needed space. So Conley will position himself in between Caldwell and Nikola, but the second time Jokic gets the ball, Conley will double team Nikola while perfectly knowing that someone, in this case Nickeil Alexander-Walker, will rotate over to the shooter. The sad part for the Nuggets is that Nikola Jokic, in every single clip that I've shown, played out of the double teams perfectly. He times his dribbles, moves and passes to perfection and gets rid of the ball in time, so everything is according to the playbook. It's just that Minnesota's rotations are always on point. With this Minnesota's defensive game plan that they, by the way, play during the whole regular season, every player in the back of their mind knows that after double teaming Nikola Jokic or Murray, there will be a third teammate taking over their direct matchup, so the rotations happens naturally. It's like their instinct. Instead of Rudy Gobert, Chris Finch delegated Kyle Anderson in the same position and role, meaning that Kyle was sagging off of Aaron Gordon, and while Kyle is 6'9" with a 7 feet 3 inch wingspan, he's still not Rudy. Right here, Jokic lobs the ball to Gordon over Kyle Anderson, but overall Kyle did a nice job in providing decent rim protection. It's not at the Rudy Gobert level of giving PTSDs to attacking players, but it's just another example of Minnesota's insane length. But Kyle Anderson does a better job in switching than Rudy. He can basically switch from 1 through 5. Just notice here how Kyle with his long ass planktons disrupts Jamal's dribble, and when Murray gets past Kyle Anderson, there's another lanky wing that can do a good job in rim protection, waiting for Murray under the basket. Minnesota's defense is all about length and discipline. Expanding on Jamal Murray, the defense against him reminded me how Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels applied full court pressure to Devin Booker. Now with Phoenix Suns it was pretty simple. Suns played 3 shooting guards with Devin Booker at the point, so you cut off the Dragon's head and let it bleed. You pressure the only player that somewhat knows how to play make, and without Devin Booker the Phoenix Suns couldn't figure out how to get anything from their half-court offense. Of course with the Denver Nuggets it's a bit more complex, but if you have a luxury of possessing 2 animals just waiting to be unleashed on opposition superstar players, like most teams are lucky to have one player who's capable in full court pressing without giving any advantages to guards like Jamal Murray. Full court press, even if it doesn't result in steals, it takes away precious seconds from the shot clock and it ends up freezing opposition's half-court possessions. So if you have the required tools to pull it off, it can be extremely beneficial to your defense. Minnesota's pack of wolves are flourishing in the playoffs intensity. They love flirting with the thin line between legal contact and actual fouling. They love putting a lid on Jamal Murray and not allowing him to freely breathe. Jamal Murray in these first few games against the Timberwolves seemed annoyed by Jaden's defense and the amount of bodies that he needs to bang in order to go to the rim. The only shot that Minnesota seems to give for Jamal Murray is the step back free throw line jump shot. Other options like driving and finishing around the rim is always met with resistance, and step back 3-point shots are contested by long arms of McDaniels or Nas Reed. So life for Jamal is definitely not easy. I watched Minnesota's games in the regular season, and the reason why I'm a big fan of the Timberwolves basketball is they kinda prove that 2 big man lineup is more than plausible in modern NBA. Well, also they show that playing good defense, well, maybe it doesn't get clicks as playing good offense, but personally for me, it's a joy to watch the way Minnesota's defense hounds great offenses.